Oregon's better than ever. They're really good.
Yeah.
Deserving of the #1 ranking. And the Chip Kelly era, it was a moment in time. It was can't be recreated. It was amazing. But this team's better than those teams.
No, yes. If those teams played this one, I can't say there's no doubt, but I would feel very confident that this team would beat that
This one is built as good as any Oregon team has ever been built.
Yes. Well,
that said,
and it's better up front.
It is just, perhaps it's just the year, but the Big Ten is super lame.
Well,
and we knew this. Like we know the style of football in the Big Ten, and it was interesting. The idea of the more offensive West Coast teams jumping into the Big Ten and seeing how that played out, that was interesting.
Sure.
But what we're seeing, and I think it may just be the year, that Oregon is just that much better than a lot of these Big Ten teams, and they would be so the same in the Pac-12 if the Pac-12 was still together. So it's kind of a tough year to judge this by. But we knew the Big Ten style, but I just thought it would be way more fun testing yourself in this, and it's really lame. These games suck. They don't even keep my attention.
Although, to be fair, right, the Ohio State game was, one of the best games in Oregon history. And you want to talk about being tested. I mean, my God, no pass interference call, and Oregon probably loses that game. So, that's the definition of a razor-thin margin. You're not going to get Indiana, who may be the second best team. You're not getting Penn State, who may be I guess it'd be the third best, right? Because Oregon, Ohio State. You're not getting the third best team. You're not getting Iowa, who would be right behind them. And by the way, Iowa all of a sudden is scoring points. So to be fair to the Big Ten,
scheduling has been, and like I said, that's maybe just part of it's part of the fact that it's just this particular year, maybe.
So you got because the top right now, if you go through the Big Ten standings, is Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa.
And they only play one of them.
And you only play one of them.
Yeah.
So there may be an element of that. And Michigan is having an awful year. Wisconsin's having a bad year. It's one of those kind of funky things where if this was last year, we wouldn't be saying that because you'd have Ohio State and Michigan. It would be like, whoa, it would, then.
Well, again, like I said, it may just be the year. It's just really, and it may also just be the fact that Oregon's that good.
Yeah.
It's just making this kind of boring. But these games, just watching them play, and maybe it's just this stretch of games. The Illinois, what was it? Was it Purdue,
Illinois, and
Michigan. Come on.
And then Michigan State was before. Look, but at the same time, if you go back, the Boise State game was, again, white effing knuckled. So,
well, but that's not the Big Ten.
That's not the Big Ten, but you know what I mean? It's like Oregon's good, but let's not act like they're just, Oregon has had 3 games this year where it's like, holy geez. Idaho had a chance at them. Boise State should have beat them. And the Ohio State game was razor thin too. So part of this is that Oregon is really good. I think Oregon right now is the most complete team in the country, but it's also the most complete team in the country that's damn near lost 2 games. So the margin for error is still razor thin, and the rest of because of the scheduling, it's been soft. And the other one too is, is it possible that Oregon has, and we'll see as it goes on, have they achieved the level, like Ryan Day, when's the last time Ryan Day lost? Well, I guess he just lost to Dan Lanning. But before that, when was the last time he lost to a Big Ten team not named Ohio State? He hadn't, right?
I don't think he had.
I think he was undefeated.
Yeah.
And at the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world don't lose to average SEC teams. And it's possible that that Oregon has just reached the point where Ohio State and Bama and Georgia are at, where there's really only 2 games every year that matter. And everything else, unless you just shoot yourself in the foot, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And that you're judged on that. Yeah. And because of the schedule this year, it turned out that there was only really one of those games.
No, that's fair. And I think that comes back to why I prefaced it all by saying I think it might just be this particular year.
Yeah.
But these games are just really, they just suck. They're not that fun to watch.
And there's really not going to be another one coming along that's going to.
No, there's no drama.
No.
There's 7 of the 8 conference games, complete duds.
Yeah. And Maryland's not going to offer much. Wisconsin's 5-4. I mean, they got. I was reading a thing.
9. 8 of the 9.
I think Iowa beat them 42-7, 42-10, something like that. Because I read an article. about like kind of like a come to Jesus moment with Wisconsin. Like they're still trying to process the ass kicking that they took at the hands of Iowa, and then Washington, who's not very good. So there's really nothing else besides the Big Ten title game. But whether that's Ohio State, whether it's Indiana, like if you think that like you just are rolling to the Big Ten title game, anyone that watched the Ohio State game will tell you. Now Ohio State's got some O-line injuries, and we'll see if they can kind of correct those. Although it looked much better at Penn State. Anyone that was there at that game that thinks that Ohio State is just some sort of road apple for you to win the Big Ten title, I don't know what game you were watching.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not the one I saw.
I don't think anybody is saying that. All I'm saying is these games, I just thought the Big Ten would be much more fun.
And it hasn't been.
And it has really been lame. And these games are really not good.
No.
And that's partly due to Oregon just being really good, way better than some of these teams that they're playing. Some of it's due to their scheduling, whatever. But yeah, they get Ohio State again. Buckle up. Can't wait. You're right. It's like the Alabamas and Georgias of the world in the SEC. Maybe Oregon is at that level now, where you just don't. I mean, it's going to be boring, except for 1 or 2 games a year, which I guess that's cool, but also
that's what happens when you elevate to a top 5 or 6 program. And yes, this is like what Nick Saban and Kirby Smart yell about their fans is they're like, do you guys take all this for granted? Like you just think that we just roll out every week and we just beat the hell out of people. And they're like, this is harder than you realize, but there are schools that have had to deal with this. And that's like what Penn State's dealing with. Penn State wins 10 games every year, but they can't win these games. They beat everyone else. They don't lose those games they're not supposed to lose, but they can't beat the good ones. And maybe just that kind of comes with elevating yourself to that next level. And if that's the case, there may be some dud boring games, but ultimately, if that's where you achieve, then you're playing in high stakes poker. Now you're getting to where those games against the Ohio States or the Bamas or the Georgias, they're like, oh my God, these are games of the year. And now you're playing in meaningful games at the end of the year, which is, again, ultimately what you're trying to do. And so you sacrifice some of the stuff for the regular season to be there on the biggest stage, and you're going to be there seemingly every year.
Yeah, somebody texted the Vancouver Ford text line and said, there was a lot of chatter from Big Ten teams about how Oregon would be in for big shock against big boy football.
No.
Yeah, well, they're not.
Well, but, maybe Washington and USC have felt that a little bit.
That's right. And that goes back to Oregon, just a pretty special team this year.
Well,
so we'll see if they can finish it off.
Yeah.
All right, our college football mani-pedi next on The Fan.
The Fan.